Hello, everyone, and welcome in. My name is Bryce Koon, and we are kicking off the official regular season coverage of a Georgia Tech football here on the Crowded Booth. And this is Swarm Talk, the Georgia Tech podcast on the Crowded Booth Network. Presented by Section 103. Make sure you check out all the great gear that they have. They do a fantastic job. I cannot say enough about the job that they do over at Section 103. Get all the greatest college football gear for your Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets. It's designed for the fan, it's tailored towards the intense Georgia Tech fan, and it's something that you are going to want to be a part of as the season kicks off this weekend. So make sure you use code Crowded Booth for 10% or 20% off your first order today. Let's get it locked and loaded. We're taking a Sunday night show, no game to recap, but just some early thoughts on this week zero game. We're going to get more into a preview of the game on Thursday. On Tuesday night, live at 7 p.m. Central, 8 p.m. Eastern, we will be taking a look and going behind enemy lines, inviting some Florida State podcasters on the show and get their take on this game as well. So make sure you like the video. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. Get your comments ready. It's game week. Let's talk college football. Georgia Tech, Florida State, week 0.
Pile in here and make yourself feel at home. The Crowded Booth is coming on. The Crowded Booth with Bryce Koon.
Welcome in. Beautiful Sunday evening, August 18th, 2024. And ladies and gentlemen, this is the final Sunday for Georgia Tech and Florida State fans that they don't have a game to talk about. My name is Bryce Koon, host of Swarm Talk here on the Crowded Booth Network. We talk college football. We've got a little Braves podcast that's been touch and go. But man, we're excited. We're rocking and rolling talking here on a Sunday evening. No game to talk about quite yet, but we are going to get in the mix and take an early look at this game and maybe some of the concerns I have when as going into this game for Georgia Tech. Like I mentioned, if you're just joining us, like the video, subscribe to the channel. Also, too, I want to add in here, this is also a game where you have a lot to prove. You have essentially a chance to earn respect nationally. Now, I don't know how everyone feels about Georgia Tech, but it's going to be very, very interesting. Rec Talk already in the chat. He goes, "Does Bryce know that Atkins cheated?" Well aware. But Rec Talk, facts and info. I love it. Rec Talk always good for facts and info. Let's get to a couple comments before we load this show up, and let's talk about. We were talking in the comments section before the show, and come on in, a little pregame tailgate before the show. About what different things. Jeremy says game week. Yes, it is, my friend. Zach Jones says one thing I'm confident about Georgia Tech run game versus FSU's defense. One thing I'm worried about GT's run defense. Zach, I'm almost on the same level with that. I did pose this question, and we'll be answering some of the comments. I'd love to see some of your answers throughout tonight's show. I said their run game versus Tech run defense is one of the biggest matchups in my opinion. And the question posed to the fans was, give me one thing you were confident in and then one thing you're worried about heading into the FSU game. So a little one-for-one combination here as we get ready. John Burns says, I'm worried that Tech hasn't made enough improvement on defense, but that he is confident that Tech has the best quarterback. Nick says Tech can run at will, just hoping DJU will throw some picks, and also that he's heard some great things about the defense. Andrew Scheibel. Andrew, congratulations. A married man now for the first time. First time married as a married man for football season. He says he left the Late Kick live show immediately when he got the notification here. I appreciate that, Andrew. Dylan, Rec Talk number 1. He's 1A, 1B. We'll see. Look at my boy Aaron watching the show from Japan. Thanks for tuning in. What time is it over there? Their OC not being there is huge in my opinion. Montega with a score prediction 5 days early. I'm not giving my score prediction until Thursday. If you have not seen how I picked Tech to go 7-5 and lose this game last week, but we'll see. Nick says he's watching the game from the Georgia Tech campus. Nick, that's a great segue into August 31st. Join us for our tailgate. We're going to have food. We're going to have giveaways, and we're working on a little bit of a potential sponsorship where you can also check out some cool gear on the way as well. Trevor says, if Santucci is as good as a hire as Buster, there might be a problem. I trust Key. Alex says, Camp Hell suck without the U. Maxwell says he's watching it from his couch. Is it a couch or a love seat? Aaron Holland, Cam Davis will be a surprise player for Florida State. Does Bryce know FSU never wanted panty, undersized, no good? 9:30 on a Monday morning, and we're just getting all this. Watching show from bed, hell yeah! All right, let's rock and roll. Over 100 people live, and man, we're just growing and growing. Make sure you hit that sub button. 6 minutes in, let's talk about this game. I was having a conversation for a lot of people who don't know, day job covering LSU. It's an awesome opportunity, and it's been a lot of fun. I've enjoyed it immensely, and was having a conversation because on Saturday we were sitting at the press conference, getting ready for Brian Kelly to come in, and I promise this has a tech tie to it. And people were like, "Oh yeah, college football starting next Saturday, and all this different types of stuff, and all these things." And I was like, "Yeah, like I'm excited." And obviously, people know that I used to cover tech full time, or used to cover tech in a freelance capacity, and we still obviously do a Georgia Tech show with our own podcast. So I will be interested to see what the national perspective is, because the biggest thing that I gathered from talking with, and this is media from New Orleans, this is some national AP writers, like these are some big media members that were convulsing in Baton Rouge this past weekend. And the consensus was a lot of Florida State conversation, which that's going to happen at the national level. A lot of Florida State talk, and DJU, Mike Norvell reloading, all this kind of stuff. But then a couple people, chimed in with, and they knew that I obviously had tech ties, and they said, "Yeah, but like Brinky did a good job last year. Like, I'm kind of excited. This seems like a fun team to watch in 2024 for Georgia Tech." And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But I will say, like, let's go back real quick. And before we do, I want to get to this comment. Vince says, "I pointed out the Swarm Talk logo and told my wife I made that, but it's cut off on the TV. It says Warm Talk, and now she's making jokes. Bryce Fix, I'm going to lose my confidence. It's cut off. Is it really cut off? It's not cut off on my screen. So I don't know if that's, I don't know. I'm not sure. Anyways, let's get into this. So we were having conversations about this, and the consensus was, okay, Florida State is, the bigger brand. Florida State's the team that should win this game. But you know what? Georgia Tech could be a fun team to watch. Georgia Tech could be a team that you look at and you say, okay, offensively, Haynes King seemingly has found himself in Atlanta. They've got some fun weapons. Buster Falker did a good job. Did a good job offensively last year. But when we looked at this, and I thought it was kind of interesting, I think a lot of people we're labeling it. This is just a small sample size of, yeah, that could be a fun, pesky team. It could be a fun, pesky team that Florida State would have to put up with. So I thought that was interesting because, look, I said this in the last show. Like, people know this. I grew up. Until probably 2007 or 8. The first 10, 12 years of my life was an Auburn fan. Loved Cadillac Williams, loved Jason Campbell. That 04 team was so much fun. Obviously, people know, like, we don't hide it here. Like, I grew up a Georgia fan after that, and was a Georgia fan. And one of the consensus, like, even when I go back to my family, now part of my wife's family, big Georgia fans. Her uncle went to Georgia Tech as a donor there and all that kind of stuff. And so, when we talk about Georgia Tech and you talk about it to Georgia fans, it's been this thing that is I would say, a pesky team. Like, yeah, they're just a thorn in the side. And there's nothing wrong with that. Like, you want to be a thorn in the side of competition. You want to be a thorn in the side of the teams you play. But as I was looking at this game, and just the magnitude of it, like, I don't ever want to say one game is more important than the other ones. But what I would say is this game offers an opportunity that I don't think Georgia Tech has had in quite some time. You could go back, and I'll even say this, like, the last game where I feel like you had a chance to really gain some national respect, to gain some different things, and Vince just messaged me, no big deal, appreciate it, Vince, was, and I'll just, this is off the top of my head, if you have another game that you think is better, let me know in the comments. But when you look at the magnitude of what this game could mean, I go back to Clemson at the beginning of the 2022 season, because, and maybe Louisville last year, But the Clemson game felt like one. Once again, you were the only game on that night. It was a Monday night inside Mercedes-Benz. And yes, you had been bad, but there was optimism heading into that game. I had optimism. I know in our show we talked about it, like, hey, it feels different. There's different pieces. Collins had made adjustments that he needed. Everyone felt like he needed to, had made some different hires. So what I think is, can you tell me the last time Georgia Tech had a chance to do what they had the chance to do on Saturday? And that's gain national respect as a up and coming football team, and that be the general consensus of what this program is. Not just a thorn in the side, like I was talking about, like everyone, like Georgia fans thought they were a thorn in the side every year of Paul Johnson, that kind of thing. And even, kind of the conversations I was having, once again, small sample size, was that, you had people who um, could make life difficult in terms. You had some players, but in terms of just being an up and coming program that is on the rise, like I think maybe Louisville last year, and let's be honest with ourselves, outside of the Georgia Tech fan base, people really didn't know what to expect in 2024. So, or in 2023, I should say. So Louisville, you could have been that. But like the North Carolina game, yes, a couple years ago in the Benz, stuff like that. And I don't want to go down this rabbit hole, but let me know what games you might be thinking of. But the biggest thing to me is, here is a chance to gain some type of national respect on the biggest stage. I mean, College game day is going to be there. You get to play a marquee game in a really, really cool environment for fans. But as I sit here and I kind of tell myself, like, you got to take advantage. You have to take advantage. And I said this on Thursday night, and some comments were thrown back at me, and I get that, about not there not being anything such as a moral win. I get that. I don't think a coach should say that publicly. But I think that you're lying to yourself if you can't point out different wins in this battle. Like, if you lose this game 44-41, okay? Like, yeah, that sucks. But it also to me, could be one of those things where you're like, that's kind of a moral victory, because now you've seen you could play with a team for a full 60 minutes on that level. You saw a glimpse of it in that, in the clean old fashioned hate last year. But it's going to be, just in my opinion, this is a game where you have to take advantage of. And so what does that look like? Is it going to get a win? Of course. Like, if you go win this football game on Saturday at noon, if you go do that, you are changing the perception and the trajectory of where Georgia Tech season can go in 2024. When I did my predictions last Thursday night, I mean, look, I think for the most part, people are on par with where I kind of sat. 7-5, I believe it was 7-5, 5-3 in conference. And once again, I've said this, like, I think the ceiling could be around 9-3, 10-2 is pushing it just a little bit for me, but I can see a path there. But 9-3, and then you go to, the floor, I think, is 4-8. Like, I think that's as bad as they'll do. And that's like if the wheels fall off type of thing, injuries and all that kind of stuff. So if you win on Saturday, it changes the trajectory of what this program looks like to the outside. And I'll say this, let's give credit where credit's due. Brent Key has not cared one bit. And maybe the last regime cared too much. And part of that is, I think the pendulum has swung from, let's say, okay, we have to market and brand ourselves, and we lost that, to now it's gone over to the other side, where now you sit in a situation where let's coach and play football and let the results speak for themselves. And right now that's worked for Brent Key. 1 year in, that's worked for him. Give credit. I think that's helped. But to reach the new heights, I think you got to be honest with yourselves and say here, like, here's a primetime opportunity. Here's a massive chance to earn respect from the prognosticators that make decisions on college football, the prognosticators that make the rankings, to everyone, that this is not just another throwaway P4 team, because that to me is kind of what it looks like in that sense, just from talking to people on the outside looking in, is that it's just like, okay, here, this is just another team that is maybe upsets a team every now and then, but they're not really consistent and they're not really building to be a premier team. So that's where I sit with this of like you have a chance to establish yourself. And then in terms, and we had a comment already about it. I'll get to it here. Aaron says this in terms of the trajectory of the season, winning against Florida State could quite easily put Georgia Tech in talking of playing Charlotte. Like you have to ask yourself, and as crazy as people might think that is outside of the Georgia Tech fan base, like if you win this game, I don't want to say, I'm not going to use the word driver's seat because it's week 0, but like you have arguably played your toughest conference game. At Louisville could be tricky, at Virginia Tech, but you've arguably played your toughest conference opponent there in week 0. So 2024 can really be kicked off with a bang. It can be kicked off with, okay, we lost, but man, we're building there. What you can't have on Saturday, and I'll go into a little bit of this on Thursday and even Tuesday night when we talk with some Florida State podcasters about this. You cannot lay a dud in Ireland. Like you cannot go all the way over there and get beat 42-17. You can't go over there and get beat 31-20. Not 31-20, but 31-10. Like you can't lose. What's the spread on this game? Is it down to an 11.5? You need to cover the spread. And like that stuff like that maybe doesn't matter, but I just think in terms of the perception of this program and this has to be a competitive game. And Zach just says this right here. Like it has to be a game. And he does say, yes, it is 11.5. It's going to be very interesting. Now, look, hey, here's a Georgia fan. As a Georgia fan, I firmly see Georgia Tech winning one of the FSU or Notre Dame games. Maybe so. Like, this is just where we sit with this of like, you have to go there and be competitive in a losing effort, or you have to win the football game. The option of getting blown out is just cannot be had because I think what it does, and look, I cover a program full time that has not won their opener in 5 years in LSU. They haven't won since 2019. And I'd imagine the same is going to be happening in the locker room at Tech in the sense of the opening game of the season can kickstart your season or send it in a spiral. And it is such a formative game in terms of the mindset you take in the next week. Getting blown out, physically dominated, that is just going to be such a damper on where the fan base is in the trajectory of the program. It would be a disappointment, I think, obviously for the coaching staff, a disappointment for the players. And then you'd have to ask yourself or tell yourself, we're going to figure out what the resiliency level of this team is very quickly, like very, very quickly. So I think that you can't lose this game in a blowout. You cannot get utterly dominated, wipe the floor with. And look, folks, I mean, Florida State released their depth chart. It's veterans everywhere. I mean, they have guys that have played a ton of football everywhere. The concerns for me, the early concerns, and I'll tell you this, is they might be able to line up and run the football down your throat, and you might not be able to do anything about it. Like, do I think that's going to happen to the extent of what I just said? I don't think so. But what if they can do it? So all this talk and like, let's just be real here. The jokes that the Georgia Tech fan base has made about DJU not being this, not being that. What if he doesn't have to be this or that, and they ride 2 or 3 running backs, let him play off the play action, and they put up 35 points, 35, 40 points. See that's where I'm getting to. I don't think that they're going to have to go into this game and throw the ball 40 times. So I think that for me in this sense, you have a lot of things going for you for Georgia Tech. You have this positive momentum that's been building out of fall camp about the defense. The offense has all this hype. But when you kick off on Saturday, none of that matters. I mean, like, let's just be frank. What we're saying here is not going to matter until we get a chance to watch this game. So I think the biggest thing for Georgia Tech is, like I said, be competitive, whether it's in a losing effort or you obviously win the game. Do not get blown out. And you've got to be able to stop the run. Because I think if you could get into a situation where you can, if you get into a situation where you're able to force DJ to throw the ball 30, 35, 40 times, that's where you want to be. Because I do think the pass rush is going to have an opportunity to get after the quarterback. If you're forcing him to beat you, that's got to be the recipe. That has got to be the recipe for success. You cannot let Roydell Williams, you cannot let I call him LT, the running back they've got over there. You can't let those guys, because they're almost three deep at the running back position in terms of who they can utilize. You can't let that running game get momentum. If it does, to me, it'll start feeling like a snowball effect. It'll start to feel like a game where, you know, you're on your feet. And I'm going to get to this comment here because we did get a donation. I appreciate that. But it starts to feel like a game you're on your heels. And that's kind of another key. And I'll get into this on Thursday more in depth. You cannot fall behind early, because I think Florida State's going to really want to be so physical. They've got a very veteran offensive line. They've got a veteran quarterback, regardless of how explosive you think he is. They're going to play a different brand of football than they played in 2023. It's just going to be different. I agree with the synopsis that Travis is probably the higher upside quarterback, but when you look at what DJU brings to the table, if they run the ball efficiently, that's going to help him so much. It doesn't mean he's bad. It just means that he can be set up, with the run game, and then he can play off of that. Much like, let's just be honest, much like how Haynes King has success, or any quarterback for that matter. So if Florida State establishes the run on Saturday, that's the first red flag for me. If they establish the run, they're picking up chunk plays, 5 yards here, 6 yards player, 12 yards, 4, 6. I mean, that you can't keep them at a yards per carry of 3.7 or lower. That's when it starts to get worrisome for me in terms of your defense being able to stop. Now, look, we'll see what happens. Let's get to a couple comments here, and then I'll kind of get into the second half of what we want to talk about. Appreciate the donation there, Dylan. Thanks so much for tuning in. Make sure you subscribe to the channel if you have not already. If you're watching on X, which I know a lot of you are here tonight, make sure you head over to the YouTube channel. Give us a subscription. Just hit the follow button. Completely free. Dylan does say, off topic, how much of the Bowling Green and Boston College were Key's fault? Does it hurt your opinion, confidence in Key's ability? It hurts mine. I think that's a fair assumption. I also think it's just the up and down. It's the up and down roller coaster that a rookie season is as a head coach. At the time, the Bowling Green loss was pitiful, but I think that the way they turned it around now, in retrospect, like that's, if you have to have a loss like that, the way they turn it around is big for me. So appreciate that, Dylan. All right, we're going to keep rolling here. Zach Jones says, North Carolina did that too with Hampton. They ran the ball and was picking up 10 to 15 yards nonstop. We won that because Tech made it nasty. Tech has to make this nasty. Zach could not agree more. But here's the problem. If you start to try to make this game, you can't play Florida State's brand of football and win, I don't think. You're going to have to force some turnovers. Like I said, you're going to have to force DJU to throw the ball 30, 35, 40 times. I mean, he's just going to have to. It's going to be interesting. Montego brings up a great point here. If we're not careful, could turn into the Clemson game in 2022. We were in it. Defense let go of the rope in the third. Montego, this is a great point. A lot of people don't realize, because I think they just looked at the box score, or they just looked at the final score. Georgia Tech offensively, what really wasn't in the game, but I do agree to your point in terms of defensively, they were holding on for dear life. And like you said, they let go of the rope. They couldn't really they couldn't do a ton, but I agree with you. I also said the Clemson game in 2023, like, you were physically manhandled, and that has to be a concern of, you're going to know really quick how much this defensive line has improved and what the depth of it is. Because, like I said, I think Florida State's going to run the football a lot. Dr. Bob says, jumping in for a bit, back in Georgia for a short bit. Go Jackets, beat the Noles. Appreciate you tuning in. Trevor says, FSU has issues with penalties last year. Could be a big factor. Weather conditions could play a factor. Most likely will be rainy and wet, which would benefit the run game. it'll be interesting. DJU is a load too tough to bring down. Hate playing quarterbacks like that. No, I agree. Anthony says, "Let's go." What's up, Anthony? Jonesy gets his pick in. Tech 38, FSU 35. Doesn't relate to the conversation, Clayton says, but I was wondering, does Georgia State have a better chance of beating Tech, or does Tech have a better chance beating Georgia? Wow, that is a interesting question. I'd say I don't know. That's a really good question. Georgia State might have a better shot at beating Tech. I think the chances that Georgia, and this is just obviously off of August 18th, I think chances of beating Georgia and Athens are going to be really, really hard. Flood insurance guru is a loyal Georgia Tech fan. I do think we get blown out. I think we run off 6 straight wins after that. Now this is an interesting take here because if you go back to when I brought in my predictions, and I'll see if I can bring that up again. Let's see what we got here. I do believe we have it in the files somewhere. Let's roll because you see right here. Now I'm just going to call you Guru. Apologies because I don't have your full name. I do say here that Florida State you lose Florida State and then you win 3 in a row. I think Louisville could be a toss-up game, but very well you could win 6 in a row and find yourself being 6-1 heading into that Notre Dame game. So I do not hate that your thought process there of what you're saying. I don't hate that at all. Dutta Bomb says, I am perplexed by Alex Atkins' suspension. The NCAA seems to be erratic right now, how they're policing the sport, recruiting violations, NIL area make no sense. I think for a lot of people, this ruling, by the way, we've known about this Alex Atkins situation for a long time. And I think it's kind of come back to light because the season's starting and Norvell made the comment today about that. But it'll be interesting. Now, Zach Jones says this, how much do you think FSU being without their OC will impact their game day offense? I will tell you this, Norvell is super involved in this. Alex Atkins, while a good coach, I think this was an opportunity for him to get a better title. I think that Alex Atkins can be a head coach somewhere one day. I think I think he does a very fantastic job. But I will say that in terms of the day-to-day, like this shouldn't make that big of it shouldn't be that big of an issue. You have a veteran quarterback, a head coach who's heavily involved in the play calling and what you do offensively. Yes, it shouldn't. You can't blame it. If Florida State loses this game, you cannot blame it on the fact that Alex Atkins wasn't there. That's what I would say. Power Tech says, hopefully our added depth will help GT keep it close and win in the end. Key to success says Tech loses this game but covers the spread and only loses 2 ACC games this year, FSU and Miami. Dylan says, what's Norvell's record in neutral site games and thoughts about the FSU OC issue? How much does that help us, if at all? I think it can. I don't think it should be used as an excuse, though, if they lose. Anthony, appreciate you tuning in, Anthony. I had a debate earlier today with 2 buddies, both played for Coach Paul Johnson, the Orange Bowl team. That's awesome. That's really cool. That Tech is competing on the recruiting show with the big boys. They disagreed. What are your thoughts? Very good question. I would say this. When they want to, they can, if that makes sense. Think of it as like each team has their own purse, and in terms of NIL, because we know we're talking about this openly here. Each team has their own purse in terms of NIL. You have to be able to divvy that up correctly. And I think that when Georgia Tech finds someone they really, really want, they have the ability to compete with the big boys on that level now. Couldn't have said that 365 days ago. I think we can say that now. But I don't expect this to be a free-for-all in terms of, like the way that Ole Miss, A&M, and Oregon play the game, or in Texas to a certain extent. I think it has to be a concentrated effort because the purse for, I'll just be real here with you. The purse for Georgia Tech is smaller than Ohio State and Florida State's. So when you get to the fact of the NIL offer is heard by other programs, they may not have deemed that we want to go to that level. Whereas Georgia Tech said, yeah, this is a bigger chunk of our purse, but this is what we think. This is where we think we have to go with this. If that doesn't make sense, let me know. Louisville lost their star receiver. Yeah, Colin Lacey, that's big. Dev says, I think this game will be close for a while. Whether our defense will keep us in it is the real question. Forcing those fumbles or picks will be the difference. I know, hands down. Dr. Bob says, I'm hoping we can confuse DJU like we did in 2021. I trust Santucci after his time at Duke, saw firsthand the discipline and scheme up close. His defense has forced consistent execution on long drives. This is a great also synopsis too of what we could see happen in 20 and on Saturday is I will say I do think that the weapons around DJU, the team is better than what he had in Clemson in 2022. But I do not believe that you'll be able. The problem for me is it's just I got to see it before I believe it. And other people might be more optimistic than me. I've got to see that this front seven can be disruptive consistently. Like that's where I've got to see. I think they are idiots. Georgia just pulled in a 5-star and got him over FSU, GT, and Tennessee. Georgia high school coaches have literally said Key is doing great in the state of Georgia. No, they do well. In terms of NILs, where I was answering that question. Benjamin London says, with a win for Georgia Tech, this will continue to prove that Brent Key is truly trying to prove that even with a tough schedule, they can play with some of the best teams in the ACC. Bryce, all else being equal, our wide receiver core versus FSU secondary or FSU wide receiver core versus our secondary. Ooh. I think this is a push. I think it's a push, honestly, because I think that you've got some and I even might lean FSU because I think that while there's some names that we're all excited about in Georgia Tech wide receiver room, they have to be able to. They've got to be able to step up and be that consistent threat to help alleviate Singleton. So that's what. And Anthony says that. Thank you, and he says the gap's closing. Maxwell says in a best case hypothetical scenario, let's say our defense makes the same jump improvement that our offense did last year. GT or FSU. Sorry if this has already been asked. Oh, if we're going hypothetical scenario, I mean, look, you're talking about a Georgia Tech defense in Maxwell's world that we're speaking here. You're talking about a Yellow Jacket defense that is top 20. So yeah, I'm taking Georgia Tech to win because I think this is a team that's a fringe playoff team. If Georgia Tech's defense makes a similar jump to what the offense did last year, you can win the ACC. Like you might even win it. Like you might be the odds-on favorite to win. That's how good that jump was last year. Dev said Petty being a 5-star that uniquely had interests that were aligned with ours made him the perfect 5-star to get. We're not doing that with just any random 5-star recruit. This is exactly what I'm trying to say, Dev. So that's really good stuff right there. Some banger questions in here. Hello, Monte. Yeah, this is great. This is a great Q&A we've got going on here. All attention will be on ESJ. Time for Malik, Leo, Chase, and Larry to eat. Completely agree with you here. That's the part for me where I might give the edge to Florida State, but I don't know because FSU's got some good defensive backs. Like I believe that Cypress is going to follow Singleton. Azare Thomas, like he's a veteran now. He's expected to step up. So we'll see. Sean Pierce says, how much is our kicking game improved? Field goals can make or break you in close games. And Tech's kickers have been pretty slack the last couple of seasons. I think Aiden Burr's a real deal. I mean, the kid's got a ridiculous leg. It's all about becoming more consistent. I think that he's well on his way to being able to do that. So, you add him with Shanahan, like this group needs to be top 5 ACC. And Sean, you really do bring up a great point because early on in the season, special teams can be something where I'm not saying people don't work on it as much because they definitely do, but it can be one of those things that slip through the cracks as you're trying to get in prep ready and get ready for a game. I guess I would say that. So it's I think it's going to be one of those things where Aiden Burr, I think, is going to be really, really good. Like I think that he's a guy that could really challenge for some awards by the end of his Tech career. Like I think he's NFL type of kicker. Loved him coming out of high school. I had the chance to talk with him. It's a shame, that what happened in his freshman year, but it'll be very interesting. Very good point here. I feel like Key is keeping Haynes King or DJ uncomfortable for each team respectively. I feel like Key is keeping. Yeah, it is. I mean, you have to force these guys into bad decisions because this is what I'll tell you. As crappy as for some reason Georgia Tech fans think DJU is, if you give any quarterback in the world time to process and go through each one of his progressions, he's going to pick you apart. And I'm telling you, they have weapons, whether it's out of the backfield, whether it's at the wide receiver positions, like they've got some dudes. Malik Benson is going to be hard to cover, in my opinion, for this team. So I think that is going to be a massive, massive key to watch just in terms of what we got going on, what we think could happen. So that's going to be something. Now, Aaron brings up a great point here. Haynes King can't play hero ball. A multi-turnover game will cost us the game. Agreed. I will tell you this, and Aaron, this you pose a great question because I wanted to get into this. What would also be super disappointing is if you have a chance to win this game and you can look back, and I know we like to do this, if, wins, buts. Okay, yeah. But sometimes you can really look at it and you can sit there to yourself and say, if we wouldn't have thrown a pick right there, you don't know what could have happened. Or if we didn't fumble that ball right there, you don't know what could happen. Or if we didn't get that big penalty. And so what I mean by that is the run game has to be there. The receivers have to step up. We talked about it in the show a couple weeks ago. Everything has to be better so that Haynes King can be better. Because King was dynamic last year. He was explosive. For him to be better all around quarterback would be, to me, it'd be interesting. I don't know. It would be very interesting. Who most likely keeps their composure the best? Are you talking between Norvell? I'm guessing you're talking between Norvell and Key. I'll let you answer that. It seems like Mike Norvell has a much more complex plan for adapting to jet lag than Key. Maybe cause for concern. I mean, I'm also going to say this too. Like, I've sat in one Mike Norvell press conference my entire life. It was last year when LSU played Florida State down in Orlando. Really, really liked Mike Norvell. Like, you could tell he loved his team. I think that he's one of those guys where opposing team fans, you might not love him, but if he was your coach, you'd love him. Same thing like the Brent Key stuff, like the way he fights for his guys. I think Norvell kind of does that. And you have to respect it. Like, if you're a fan of that team, that's really cool. So in terms of, but where I'm going into this is, Nick, I think that it's one of those situations where Key's not gonna. He just doesn't talk a lot about stuff like that, and if he does, it comes off as some type of like remark that's like a little bit sarcastic. And I just think that's the way he is. That's the rapport he has with a lot of the media members, and so it is what it is. Like, I think that you're just going to have to sit there and be like, okay, well, you're not really giving us your answer. So to that, I'm sure they have a complex plan. I'm sure that he is, relied on the last time Georgia Tech went over there and what it was like. Looking at last year with any relationships he has or anybody on that staff has. Uh, anyone on the staff he has between like Navy and Notre Dame, and hey, how did you handle this? That kind of stuff. So I don't think it's a massive cause for concern. DJ or Flood, the Mr. Guru, appreciate you. DJ struggles. Do we see a quarterback controversy at FSU? You could maybe. You could. Yeah, you could. I think so. Anthony Perez, I truly believe the team chemistry that the team chemistry and continuity that Tech has coming into this game versus a pretty much brand new FSU team will show on the field. It definitely could, and I think this is something that will matter. I strongly do believe if you can get into a scenario at the end of the game, close football game, that kind of stuff matters. Rapport matters. And look, I mean, I'll say this too, though. The devil's advocate, to your point, Anthony, to me would be the same thing could have been said about Florida State last year, and they were one of the best. They were one of the best teams in college football. So that to me is where it's like, okay, it definitely could be. The devil's advocate is they did it last year. Does that mean it's going to happen this year? I don't know, but if there's one guy who's shown that he can, bring a team together and get them to gel very quickly, I mean, that's really big to me. Let's just send good vibes that these young men come back healthy and injury free. I do believe that. Nick says, well, Key has said several times that you don't want to overcomplicate it and he's not doing anything. We'll see, I suppose. Yeah, it'll be interesting. And then Anthony says, fair. And I like this too. Nick says, after next week, I don't care about FSU. All right, I did want to get to this real quick because Dylan said this. Well, here it goes. I'm curious to see how DT transfers play. Gore and the kid at Penn State, Vandenberg, are going to have to play significant snaps. Yeah, I think so too. I agree with you, Dr. Bob. I think people don't understand that we were a miss blocked against Louisville and 2 defensive collapses, BGBC, away from a 9-3 season last year. Even if Tech improves 10%, we should at least go 8-4. I'll say this, and I think I get to catch a lot of heat for this. Yeah, you're right. You're right. The problem is if you're a Georgia Tech fan, you really can't be using that because if Miami kneels, you're not in the bowl game. So I'm not like that's just what I'm saying with that comment. It's not a problem. I understand what you mean by it, but if you're going to use that argument for that, you also have to be able to use it the other way, where a couple plays here and there, you also could be 4-8, and that's just how football goes. And I don't typically like to use um, that analogy, I would say, because I think you can use it both ways. So if you're using it to prove a positive point, well, you've also got to be willing to say, well, 3, 4, 5 plays here the other way, and we're 4-8, and there's not a lot of momentum coming into 2024 at all. So that would be where I would see him. They're going to have to keep our DTs fresh. How if Tech plays slightly better? Is Tech play slightly than they did against UGA? Do they beat FSU? Two totally different teams. I mean, I think it's really hard to say how, in my opinion. Um, I don't know. Yeah, and this is Montega. You prove it here exactly. The record last year, sure, but we're a kneel and a catch from Tez walk away from being 4-8. Yeah, and like I'm not making fun of it. It's just a woulda coulda thing. It's just one of those things. Like you can use it for positive vibes. You can use it for the other side too. So, Jordan says you can build a team through the portal, but having the team stay together gives a large momentum towards Tech 2017 or State. Not do not disagree. I will just go with this again. He's done it once before, and they were one of the best teams in college football. Does it happen again? Does what happened last year have a direct reflect on what happens this year? I don't believe so, but it doesn't mean that you have to dismiss it. So I think that's very, very true. The fan base needs to show that this year 30K fans isn't a home field advantage. Agree. You are what your record is. I get the tough schedule, but you are what you do on the field. Ooh, Dr. Bob and I might disagree here. Results matter. Dr. Bob's an intelligent man. Results do matter. And I know in his business, results definitely matter. I do think there's an example of some programs are a little bit better. They're not necessarily what their record indicates. Where when you compare, and I'll use this, maybe this is a cop out to this debate here. The ball does not lie, like Dylan says. But I will say when you compare cross conferences, that's where you get into sticky situations because I do firmly believe that in some conferences an 8-4 team is better than a 10-2 or 9-3 team in another conference. That's what I believe. I agree with Josh Pate on the "you are what your record says you are" debate. I agree with Bob. At the end of the day, the record is the record. It is. That's very true. How much of a drop off is from Jordan Travis to DJU and Dr. Bob versus Bryce Beef? Confirmed. We'll just have to. Dr. Bob went to Canes today. Didn't see you there. For people who don't know, and I'm not going to disclose the address. Dr. Bob lives probably 10 minutes away from you now. Wild times. All right, let's get to this one real quick. We got about 10 minutes or so before we hop off. How much of a drop off is from Jordan Travis to DJU? This is. I don't know, man. I mean, this is kind of hard because I need to see DJU in this setting. The problem is we don't have a game to go off of. I don't think DJU is a bad quarterback. I don't think that he has. I would say this. I think Jordan Travis's ceiling is higher at the college level. I think Jordan Travis is a better college quarterback than DJU. The drop off, I think they're just going to play differently. So that's kind of where I sit with that. Your pet cat meow says they lost 3 of their better defenders and apparently are bad at tackling. Where are we hearing? And I'm not saying you're not telling the truth. I said, where are we hearing that they're bad at tackling? They lost 3 of their better defenders. Once again, the idea that this is one thing that for people who watch the show, I really want to break this. I want to break this habit of, well, because of what they lost last year, that means that there's no possible way it can be this good. It still might not be that good, but it's not because of what happened last year. It's because the people on the program now, it's because the people in the program now aren't what they need to be. I don't think it has. I would disagree with that. I would rather us play a tough schedule than an easy one. I'd rather be tested than get blown out come playoff time because you're not tested. Agreed. I'd say 8-4 Florida would be better than undefeated Liberty. One has won against multiple ranked teams. The other one's definitely is not. Agreed. DJU threw for 2,600 yards and 21 touchdowns and 7 interceptions with worse weapons. He's not a pushover. I'm telling you, if the guy if he stays upright and they run the football, I don't like. That's to me what I'll tell you. The reason Florida State fans are laughing at Georgia Tech fans because who said they can win this game, or just people in general. And like, there are people on the opposite ends of both spectrums in any sphere we're talking about. But to Montega's point here, this guy's not a pushover. I also don't think he's a guy that can. I don't right now. I don't trust him down 10 in the fourth quarter to go win you a football game by himself. But man, if you give him a running game that's popping along at 4 or 5 yards a pop each time, and you give him some weapons that can make some nice yards after catch, he is your quarterback. Like, I do believe that. And maybe I'll be wrong come on Saturday, but I think it's a general consensus of if he just does that, they should be pretty good this season. Donna Bob says, I'm going to drag Bryce to at least one game at Yeoman Stadium this year. The beef is between me, Ralph, over John Sumrall. Dylan says, bottom line, do you think stopping the run wins us the game? I do. I don't think I don't think the recipe for success for Florida State is to throw 30, 35, 40 passes a game. So I do. Who is Tech's second best D-line behind Romello Height? On the game? Because I don't even know if he's the best defensive lineman right now, in my opinion. It needs to be Zeke Biggers. It needs to be him. Also, we were horrible at tackling last year. Can't use an argument. What color do-rag will GGU be sporting? Andrew says the talk has been about where FSU has lost talent, but there are position groups you think FSU is better at this year. I think at the edge position, they're ridiculous. Look, they lost Jared Verse last year. I think that they are almost just as good. Patrick Payton's a freak. Marvin Jones Jr. is really, really good. That's a spot that concerns me because your tackles are going to learn very quickly where they are in their development because that's two potential NFL guys that they're blocking. Now, and I'm going to go more in depth. I don't think they have a Braden Fisk like guy in the middle, and that to me is what made that entire front seven so difficult to deal with. But on the edge, that scares me. Now, I'm not saying it's better, Andrew, because they were really, really freaking good last year on that. But Peyton and the young guy they had last year, that was really good. This year, I think they can be super good. Peyton, to me, I think could pop off. Zeke or Machias, I think Zeke is up there. Probably Sylvain overall, but Kevin Harris at rush in. Yeah, but he also had Ollie Gordon at running back, brother. Who are we talking about here? I'm sorry. Ollie Gordon played at Oklahoma State. DGU played at Oregon State. I think the linebacker overhaul is going to pay dividends. I do agree. I think Yonjman could really surprise some people. Looks like he's put on some weight. Short of transferring to UNC, his running back is going to be a downgrade when he transferred. I'm sorry, Dev. I'm going through the comments here. I'm kind of lost on where you're at in the conversation. A game manager for a top 10 is better than a streaky quarterback for an unranked Tech team. That's probably true. From what I've heard, the general consensus that Tech's D-line is going to be get manhandled. How likely is that? Hard to say. I mean, it's hard to say, but like that's my two biggest concerns. Your D-line gets manhandled. You can't block both of their ends. And it could get ugly. Like that's the way this game gets ugly. If they do whatever they want offensively, they can run the ball. DJU can run. If DJU starts to run the football, that's a problem too. You got to be able to tackle. I think a lot of Tech fans forget to win in games like this because they feel the improvement on our side, but act like every other program is stagnant. Every program is improving. The only problem I would have with that statement is that some programs are regressing. I will say that, but I don't think Florida State is one of those in terms of a program. Record-wise, are they going to be 13-0 this year? I would be surprised by that, but I don't know. We ran on both their UG and Miami transfer last year, but it's back to the if game. Once again, I don't know if last year necessarily really matters. I get the idea there about it tackling. From a video coach Revel shared a video on one of their quarterbacks, and there was bad tackling on display. Yeah. Yeah, because it definitely brain farted. My bad. Sylvain and Romello will be difference makers in the pass rush. I think they have to be. What type of momentum? This is where we'll end it. What type of momentum could Tech get if they win this game? We kind of started the show off with this, David, and if you win this game, you earn the respect. You set the tone for a shot in Charlotte. That's what this does. It I don't want to move goalposts on expectations. If you win this game, you, in my opinion, have a chance to be in Charlotte, and you probably should make it. Like That's what I believe. Aaron says, fun fact, last year's run defense was so bad that we led the nation in opposing team total rushing attempts. We did not run on Miami. We had 0 offense that game. Yeah, I think he was talking about the Miami transfer they have. Preston Ryan says, UGA helmet. Come on, I'm assuming you're new to the channel, Preston. If Tech beats FSU, they beat Louisville. If they lose to FSU, they lose Louisville, in my opinion. So Trevor says it's a split. But hey, good Q&A. I like how we kind of turned this into a Q&A session. Look, hey, appreciate you all tuning in. I can't even see how many people are tuned in right now. The things kind of glitched out on me here. See right there, it just glitched out on me again. But hey, appreciate you for watching. Thanks so much. It is going to be very, very interesting. Now, look, we are revamping how we're doing everything on this channel this fall. It is going to be so much fun. We want you to be a part of it. We've got some really fun things planned. We've even gotten, we even have, I'll say this, everyone knows about the Georgia Tech, Georgia State tailgate, the live show on location on campus. We're going to be releasing, obviously, information. We're almost 2 weeks away from that, essentially now. But what I did want to say was, we're going to be doing some fun things. We want you to be a part of it. The best way you can do that is follow us on social media platforms. It's all at the Crowded Booth. That's X, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, all those things. Check us out on thecrowdedbooth.com. Sign up there. It's going to be very, very interesting to kind of see the content that comes out in there too. We're revamping that as well. And then finally, subscribe to the YouTube channel. If you're listening in podcast form, it's fantastic. And check out our presenting sponsor of Georgia Tech shows for the entire 2024 season, Section 103. They do a great job. I'm about to get a new order in for the season. Cannot wait. We'll be rocking it. And it's going to be fun. It's going to be a lot of fun. Like Dr. Bob says, it's a great show as always. Like, comment, subscribe, folks. I agree with you. Now, the last thing, the show schedule, okay? Every Sunday and Thursday, we are going to be live at 7:30 Central, 8:30 Eastern, talking Georgia Tech football. We'll recap. We'll go preview. We are also going to, on most weeks, sprinkle in a new show in terms of the Georgia Tech. You're going to have 3 shows a week if you're a Georgia Tech fan on this channel. We're going to sprinkle in probably on Tuesdays or Wednesday mornings a pre-recorded, this week it'll be live, pre-recorded Behind Enemy Lines podcast. This week, we're going to be talking with a couple Florida State podcasters on Tuesday night at 8 o'clock Eastern, 7 Central. You're not going to want to miss it, so subscribe to the channel, set up those notifications. Now, our live college football show that we do talk college football? We're going to be talking Georgia Tech this week. We're going to go live on Monday and Wednesday. Monday, me, Ralph, and Will are going to be giving our full playoffs. And then we're going to talk on Wednesday. We're getting back to best bets. Dr. Bob, get out the Excel spreadsheet because it is back. It's time. All of that is presented by Bet Online. Make sure you check them out over there. Be smart about it. But have yourself a good time this fall. This is Swarm Talk. Bryce Koon, Section 103, last comment. Vince Wilkes, over under on Yasso bars for the 2024 season. Like this video if we need to bring Yasso bars back. All right, you know what? Put Y's in the chat if you want to bring Yasso bars back for the 2024 season. My name is Bryce Koon, Swarm Talk, Georgia Tech Talk Show. We're live every single week. Make sure you check us on all your platforms, and we will catch you next time. It's Swarm Talk, brought to you by the Crowded Booth.
Pile in here and make yourself feel at home. The Crowded Booth is coming on. The Crowded Booth with Bryce Koon.